Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. You're with the Paisans, you're with family.
So did you guys know that I got this in the mail?
Yeah, we heard a rumor.
Yeah, it was mentioned on the last one, I think.
It was such a nice surprise. I didn't know I was going to get. I really didn't know I was getting this. So that's pretty cool.
It looks great
Thank
on
you.
you.
Honestly, I needed another trucker cap because mine gets. I get one good hat and that's all I wear for like 3 years, and then it runs ragged. So if this one works, I'm going to wear it till it falls apart.
That's fantastic. Sark's good for one of those every now and again.
You know how last time we were talking about the aforementioned Brontosaurus, right?
Of course.
All right. Look at this.
There it is.
Wow.
You found a picture. Oh my God. Dave.
Covered in the
Okay.
trees. It's covered in the branches. Oh my God.
He found
I
it.
can't believe
Mike
you.
stole this from a construction site and just snapped it off at the pole or thing, you know. And then this
I don't
other
remember
picture, for whatever reason, because Mike, remember, I don't know if he worked at Classic Video, which was a whole set of memories for me too. But from there, he got this. What's different is that you just put Tracy Lord
Yes, right there.
right on top.
Wait, there were two different times this car was covered in branches?
No,
Or is that the same?
no, it's the same thing. It's the same, but in this picture, Tracy Lords is blown down because
That's
the
right.
boat couldn't keep her up. So
She had a bad day. It was a very bad day for her.
yeah.
Were you trying to run her over a couple nights before that, or was it afterward?
You just put some standees out in the back and you just decided to smash them. Here's a going away picture.
The flag furling.
The
Flag. Great.
But those
Completely
were
forgot about
those Dave. So that's the kind of area that I would drive them through, like between houses and stuff. That's the area that we that I would do stuff with. So shamefully now, but that's
By the way, the name of that movie, do you remember? Do you know the name of that movie? The Tracy Lords movie?
I would have thought that was Blade.
Angel something, or I don't know. I can't remember.
We'll find it. Shock 'em Dead. Shock 'em Dead. 1991. Horror.
Yeah, well, that
Never
would make
even-
sense.
Never even heard of that movie.
I don't.
Well, no.
I don't think any.
Tracy Lords was a former adult actress when wasn't she an adult actress first? And she was underage, I believe. They come to find out later she had lied about her age. So all her original films are like, you can't, it's illegal to see them, I think.
That's right.
Nick, keep me honest on this.
No, that's true. No, that's absolutely
Okay.
true. She was underage. But she lied about it on purpose. So she was a participant in the lie, and then they found out later when she was much older that she was younger then, and then she started to get a legitimate acting career, I believe, because of John Waters, because John Waters cast her in Cry Baby, and then she started she actually transitioned from a adult actress into one who acted, outside of the industry. So
It's pretty
she made
rare.
a living. It was pretty.
That's pretty rare.
It was a pretty neat story if you look at it from the right angle.
And you ran her over behind a video store.
Yeah, I
in
ran her
Hillsborough.
over.
Well, Dave, we used to, so when we were in high school, and I forget exactly the years, but I worked at a place right there in Hillsborough at the time it was called Dollar Video. It's like a nail salon now or something.
Okay.
I'm almost certain that the door still has the slot in it from back in the early 90s when I worked there, because they had a slot in the door and you could push the movies through the slot.
Yeah.
So if you came after they were closed, you could just push the movies through the slot.
They were a garbage can.
Yeah,
Just a
that's
little
right.
plastic garbage can.
We
right?
didn't even, no, we were Dollar Video. We didn't even have a garbage can. They just fell
Right
on
on
the
the
floor. They just, and Mike ended up getting a job at Classic Video, which was a video store over in the ShopRite Center, right where ShopRite's still there. And we were both working at the same time for
Oh, yeah.
some time, right, Mike?
We were. Oh yeah, several years.
Yeah. So we used to like every now and again, I'd go over and visit Mike, or he'd come over and visit me. And Nick used to visit both of us because Nick was the movie head, so Nick really was the one who was like really loving the movie. So Nick would come and he would hang out at Dollar Video for an hour and watch a movie there or whatever. And then he'd leave and go over to Classic Video and watch, hang out for 2 hours.
Yeah, why bother getting a job? I'll just go watch videos with you guys.
Well, if you remember, we tried to I was trying to get you a job at Dollar Video, and
that's right.
like, the owners let you work like a shift with me, and afterwards they were just like, no. I was like, why? And they were like, oh, come on. I was like, what do you mean? Now I have to say, Nick, here's what I do remember.
I don't remember this really at all.
Well, here's what I remember, because I think this is what it probably was. Is that we had like a numbering system. Okay, so every movie they bought, it just like got a number on it. Okay, but what they started to do is they ran out of room, so they would start getting rid of old movies and clearing old numbers, right? So a brand new movie would come and it would get a random set of numbers that you'd have to like put on the box and then go put. And it wasn't like, oh, these are all the new movies that are all right here. It was like, here's one way over here and here's one way over there. It was just this whacked out system that they had. And I remember at a certain point, you were like, oh no, it's like, oh, I was like, oh shit, this movie isn't here. And you're like, oh no, it's right here. And I was like, wait, why is it there? You're like, well, I put it there. That's where all these movies are. I was like, no. I was like, no, Nick. Understand, to me, I was a child born into chaos, and my life's work has been creating order from chaos. Okay, so what you told me in that moment was just like, it's all lost. Like, I was like, holy shit. Turned out there was only like 3 or 4 videos that you had put in the wrong place, but I was convinced that you had been putting movies in the wrong place like all night long.
Oh, God forbid I put a movie in the wrong place. What is the world coming to? I mean,
the real rub would be when somebody comes up and says, I want this movie, and you're standing there going, I can't find the movie. That's why you don't want to put the movie in the wrong place. That's why there's a system.
You actually had some really good ideas. I remember one time the owner of Classic Video, who also said, no fucking way, I would never hire him, said you had a great idea that, maybe have a director section.
Well, both those places are closed now, so who's right?
Who gets the last laugh?
They're shut down, so who's proven right in the end? Everything I'm saying made complete sense.
Like, you're talking about something that was like, okay, I get it. Anybody might have an opinion about the layout of the store, things like that. But this was like, they had this numerical system, like the entire store video organization system was based on numbers. And you were like, this is stupid. Like, we should just put them like this. And I was like, oh my God.
I don't really remember this, but let me just comment on that now. That who organizes their movies? Who organizes their movies with the Dewey Decimal System or something? Like, who does that? It's always been genre. It's always been A to Z genre. So, dollars video, like 2-cent video store would have been my dream job, other than working at movie theater that time in my life. I think right around then, Quentin Tarantino. No, and this was before he came out after. But going to video store,
wasn't Pulp Fiction 92? 93?
No, Pulp Fiction came out when I was in film school. So I think that came out 94, maybe, or 5.
Okay.
So I remember seeing it in the theater for the first time and it blowing us all away.
Yeah.
So his legend about I learned the movies by watching videos came a little bit later, but honestly, there was no better place to work at a video store. And might I say, I did work at a Blockbuster Video in Wilmington for 4 months. They didn't care. Well, they knew what they had in me. They knew that I where the 9 copies of Just Cause would go.
Yeah,
they knew I knew the system there. So,
you rose to the top.
You're really humped off about Dollar Video.
I rose the cream of the crop at Blockbuster. I was the head of shrink wrapping at that place.
I had some crazy experiences working there. Like, first of all, the owners were, brand new Chinese immigrants. Okay. I mean, God bless them. Like, they were, whatever. It was like a second business, like they owned some business, or he had a job, and then they bought the video store as some kind of an investment, thinking that they were going to make money at it. And his wife, I just remember his wife, like, I can look now and I realize obviously it was such a clash of cultures, but I just remember her saying things to me sometimes that were just so completely inappropriate. Like, oh, like you're going to college? And I was like, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to college. I'm like, she's like, no, I don't think you want to do that. Your mother wants you home. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to college, Linda. I'm going to college. Her name was Linda, Dave, by the way.
I do remember that.
But yeah. And I was like, no, I'm going to college, Linda. She's like, oh, but your mother really, really is going to miss you. Your mother really misses you. Now I can look back now and I completely understand that she didn't know any better than to just tell me what would have been normal where she came from.
Sure.
But I was like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like I was a dumb kid. What the hell did I know? So I was like offended. It was ridiculous. I also had a whole thing go on there where Janelle was Mike. Wait a minute. Was it you and Janelle who came in with the masks that time?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it was.
Okay. There was
Yes,
one
it
night just to make me laugh. Mike came in with our other buddy, Chris, and the two of them wore they weren't ski masks.
No,
Were
it was like a gorilla and a wolf.
Like a
I
wolf?
think. We were animals. Yeah. With sweatpants on.
Well, what I remember is you guys
probably
just came
went out
in
and bought that
to
just
goof
for
off.
the gag.
And he just walked around the store and people were people were sort of taken aback, but they were just like, okay. And then after 5 minutes, the dude from the pizza shop down came in, the guys from Burrow Pizza. He came in and he was like, are you all right? And I was like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say they're my friends because I thought he might, what is wrong with you? So instead I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. And he's like, no, seriously, what's going on here? He obviously wasn't going to let it drop. And in retrospect, he was looking out for me. So I appreciate that. And at a certain point I was like, I know them. It's okay. And he was like not happy about it. He was not happy about it. He was like, that's not cool. That's not
That
cool.
was
I was
our,
about to call the cops.
none of us knew better. I mean, that's
Exactly.
what we did at these play.
Yeah.
I remember, back in the day, nobody knew what Tourette syndrome was, right? And
Playing that up a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, Dave, I have Tourette's syndrome. I don't know if they've told you, but they probably have, and it's fine. I don't care about it. But back when we were in high school, it wasn't nowadays Billie Eilish has it. Dan Aykroyd has it. Everyone is more aware of it because the population's gotten bigger. Awareness has it's been great.
Sure. Yeah.
Back then, the only touchstone was L.A. Law. It was a TV show, L.A. Law, because they'd say, oh, I saw that in L.A. Law. So I would call up Mike from home at Classic Video is to find out if he's working. Are you working? Yeah. And I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And so Mike would pretend not to know who I was, and I would just go in there to try to make him laugh. And I abused the fact that nobody knew what Tourette's was so badly that it's almost shameful. Everything I did back then was probably shameful. But I would go in there and I would walk up next to, I'd just walk around kind of like with the shower. I would just look around like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And look at that, what's over there? And I'd pick up a video and I'd be right next to somebody. I'd be right next to a customer, an unwilling customer. And I'd pick up the video and then I'd do something or something. And I'd throw the video across the room. And then I would turn to them and just to make Mike laugh again. I don't know why. I just would turn at somebody who's right here. I just go right at their face. And
didn't you throw yourself into a rack of videos?
I did on the way, but it had to be on the way out because I couldn't stay there after that. I had to do it on the way out.
That was the day that I got my key taken away too. I wasn't allowed to open or close the store anymore after that.
Is that right?
Is that right?
Yeah, because it's so obvious. It was just like the physics show. It was so obvious we were all in on it. Crying with laughter 10 minutes before it even happened.
You had to keep a straight face.
He's hurling himself back into a popcorn rack. There's popcorn all over the floor.
Yeah, I
and
would.
You yelled at something too because it was a Tourette's fit. You were like, motherfucker, and just threw yourself.
Oh, I would say,
rack.
I would swear my ass off. And you, Mike, you would try not to laugh as hard as you could, but you would always have to hold your mouth and walk behind the booth and out of sight because you didn't want to spoil the gag. So you just
I worked with this dude, Jeff. And I would tell Jeff, Nick's coming. And Jeff was even worse than me. He could not contain himself at all. Like as soon as you walked in the door, he would have to go in the back. Like he could barely contain himself in front of customers. And Dave, you'd see Nick just sort of walk in and he'd go back into the adult section. And they'd have like the beads, you know, in front of the adult section, like the red light in there.
Oh my God.
And Nick would just go in there and be quiet for a minute. And all of a sudden you're like, fuck. And these boxes would come flying out of the doorway. These people are in the aisles, like looking at us, you know, and Jeff and I just would run to the back and fall on the floor. You know, people waiting.
Oh.
Wait, at some point, didn't Dan start spreading the word and like people, like other kids we knew, like started showing up?
People, it became like an underground circuit thing where like people, like just, you know, people started showing up. Like it's like Pump Up the Volume, where people just gathered to hear the pirate broadcast or something. And
how did you keep a straight face?
Well, when you're, you know, I guess you get into the zone. I don't know. You know, it's like you just sort of you get into.
It's like I become the character. Okay.
It's like Daniel Day-Lewis in classic video.
You know, I'm method, dude. When it comes down to it.
I didn't know what I would do. I would just make it up on the go, and then I'd hightail it out of there. And there was always that walk back to the car again, the aftermath that I would have to deal with. Like, am I going to get in trouble from there to the car?
Yeah. And Nick, you didn't even have a membership with Classic Video or Dollar Video, I'm pretty sure, right? You had memberships at either place. You just came and you watched whatever we had on screen. You'd like kind of read the boxes, hang out with us, do that type of stuff.
Well, I paid you guys back. You know, I mean, do you remember going into McDonald's when I worked there?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you wanted to mention that, but yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember you constantly getting in trouble because the manager would be like, "What are you doing?" You'd be like, you'd have like a huge bag with 20 Big Macs. Well, it's like, how many Big Macs are on that receipt, Nick? And you're like, one. I think like 4. So it's like 2.
Well, McDonald's was the first job I ever had, and they would come in again. They'd say, "Just come in." I'd say, "Mike, just." Not on like a cell phone. They would call literally, and I'd have to pick up the landline and say, "We're coming in." Okay, and they didn't really keep track of McDonald's burgers the way they did now. You know, such an outdated McDonald's system. But they would come in and order like a cheeseburger with fries, and and I would put like 8 cheeseburgers, 9 Big Macs. I'd stuff it so it was like a pillowcase full of, you know, like a pillow and a pillowcase full of food.
Yeah.
And they'd pay like $5. You know, it was the kind of thing that we would do. It was like the Wild West at McDonald's, man. It was so much fun to do that for you guys.
Like speechless over here. I'm fumfering around just trying to find words.
Well, what's sort of funny about it too is the whole idea of the video rental store that was so popular back in the early mid 90s, late 90s, maybe even early 2000s, and now it's just completely gone. I mean, I think there's one blockbuster left. They made a documentary.
Yes.
That's right.
So I guess that one survived, kind of, but I mean,
they actually did close down finally. I read it.
Oh, did they?
The last couple of months, you actually finally closed down.
Wow. Wow. But there is sort of a nostalgia about that whole thing too, right? I mean, just the whole.
It's kind of like records in a certain way, although I'm sure vinyl lovers would tell me that's blasphemy. But, you know, there's a nostalgia in the old technology. And to Nick's point, like videotapes were movies to us. Like before that, it's like us and the telephone or the TV. None of us can imagine a world where those things, not only do they not exist, nobody's hurt. Like nobody would like, what are you talking about? You know, it's like it's just not a part of people's lives. And the concept of like seeing a movie after it was in the movies, that didn't exist. So, or maybe, 20 years later, it might show up on ABC one night, you know what I mean? With commercials cut up. But to actually see a movie again, it was like, it just didn't happen unless they re-released it in the movie theaters. So the idea that you could get a movie that you wanted, you just had to wait a year till after the movie came out. But you could like, at first you had to buy it, right, Dave? So to buy it, you'd have to be the type of consumer who would spend $200 for a video cassette. And you'd spend $1,000 on a VHS player because it was brand new technology. And then you'd spend $200 to own Star Wars on VHS, and it was like, there were people who had that. I remember somewhere in the mid 80s, I went over to someplace with Royce Bugelli to his father's house, and his father had a video, and I didn't even believe it. I was like, you're telling me we could watch Star Wars right now? He's like, yeah. And sure enough, he put it on. I couldn't believe it. Now, that is an arcane concept to anybody who's living today. Like the idea that you would even wait a year after a movie came, to where now it's like they're simultaneously releasing them. Some are just coming out on video, and it's available to you anywhere all the time through any device.
Right.
So videotapes came out, and it was like fantastic. They started, when the video store came out, it was like, we know now video cassettes cost like $90 to buy a movie. We know you're not going to do that, but this company will invest in 10 copies of all these movies and then eventually sell them at a discounted rate. You'd buy a used VHS for like $30, Dave, and you thought it was a good deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
You understand, if you had a truckload of VHS cassettes in your house right now, you couldn't get somebody to give you a nickel for them.
Right.
It's insane.
I want to share the other side of the coin, how like with vinyl, things kind of come back. Out here in Los Angeles, there is a video rental store or two or three where you can go and you can rent videos and DVDs, because there are some things you can't watch on any other medium. You go to a flea market.
There's a nostalgia factor too. Yeah.
Well, because video cassettes, one thing that they did have that you don't get nowadays, it's a time capsule into commercials and to previews and to the culture at that point. So nowadays, buying those VHSs, you probably pay $2, $3, but people, younger generations are buying VHSs for $2 or $3 or $4 because the same way we would buy vinyl records.
Yeah.
Oh, well, absolutely.
So just to return the thread to where I was going to, was to say, like, the video store became like a hangout, sort of an event thing, right? So you'd like, oh, let's have a date Friday night, and you get the two. All right, first thing we'll do, let's get some food, then we'll go to the video store, or let's go get the video first, then we'll go get some food, and then we'll go back, home, and we'll watch it together. That was sort of like how you hung out. All the guys were going to hang out. Yeah, let's go get a movie or something, and you take half hour at the movie theater at the video store to figure out what you wanted to watch. That was part of the fun.
That was part of the fun.
Right?
Yeah,
like, oh my God, I never saw this movie. You guys would love it. Or I hate those things. And blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, this movie, you like this movie. And it's like, it was a lot of fun. It was like part of the whole experience.
Or how many times you'd have something on and someone would ask you, you'd have like an old good movie on, and someone you'd get talking about that and somebody would rent that, They
were showing movies on the screen in there too. Right. So you could hang out and just watch the movie that the clerk was playing up on the screen. And you're like, oh my God. And then you say, can I rent that? And it was a very innocent way of falling in love with movies.
I got to tell you, working there for me, it was awesome. Like, I loved it because like I'd work Saturday and I'd have to get there at 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And what am I going to do? From 10 to 3 o'clock, how many people do you think come into the video store? I mean, I'm not saying nobody, but it's not like...
It's like all returns from Friday, basically, right?
It's mostly returns, and it's like, and it's slow, and you put on a movie, and I'm like, I'm getting paid to sit here and watch a movie. I'm a 17-year-old kid. What more could I ask for? And 100%. Then I was lucky enough to be in the strip mall where I had the pizza shop, which had good pizza, and then there was also the sub shop next door, Cater to Fare, which is still there. Shout out to Cater to Fare, because that place is awesome.
Yeah, place
is amazing.
Oh,
the R.
And then what happened eventually there, Dave, was our buddy Jonathan got a job eventually working at Cater to Fare. So sometimes I'd be working at Dollar Video and John would be next door at Cater to Fare. And then I'd go over and I'd call him and I'd say, here's what I want, and then he'd walk it over, which was just amazing. I was getting like these huge gourmet sandwiches.
I remember that. McElroy, right? Jonathan McElroy?
Yeah. And John was so funny, man. We had these tiny little quirks that we were so similar on. We would get the long hoagie, and his, John is very artistic. And so it's like sort of particular about things. And he's just like, you got to cut it on the right angle. It's all about the angle when they cut that sandwich. And so like we'd every now and get a sub and it would just be cut straight. And he'd be like, this is a disgrace. It's crazy.
Of
I
course.
can't even eat this. So he'd bring me over a sandwich and he'd put it down. It would be cut almost corner to corner, And he'd be like, look at the angle on that thing. I'm like, John, you're fucking awesome, dude.
We took such pride in these jobs.
Like a band song.
They're just high school jobs, but we took pride in ownership, over everything. Well, whenever a movie would come out that was the hot new release, there was only so many copies at each video store. So I remember there was a movie I wanted to see, I would call from video store to video store to say if they had a copy of it. And if they said, we have one copy left to store, okay, hang on, I'll be right down. And I get in the car and drive over there to get the movie to watch it because you didn't want it wasn't always going to be there. So
often not.
So you probably had some people come into your stores that were irate, or for the movie wasn't that this movie wasn't in. How come Lethal Weapon 2 isn't in? I came all this way for this and you don't have it.
That's right. Yeah, or we reserved it and the other person didn't bring it back. Well, did you call them? That whole thing was fraught with problems, the whole reservation system, because we were kids and that led to a lot of arguments with clientele.
Do you remember if you didn't return a movie for like a couple of weeks, you could, it would be like an arm and a leg to pay off a fee, like $89 for one movie if it was late.
Like people would drop off the movies and then they drop it off knowing they owed money. They'd push it through the slot in the morning or whatever. And then a couple of weeks later, they'd show up and they go to rent. When you say you have a charge on your account, they'd be like, what? That's ridiculous. And you're like, this was the movie, this was the date. And they would always argue. And at the time you're like, hey man, I only work here. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm getting paid. If I'm lucky, $9 an hour. Like, what do you want from me? And I remember it's funny. I remember one guy, and I won't name him because we all know this person. We all know his daughter, actually, from high school. But he came in once, and he had 4 movies that they were like literally 2 weeks overdue, each one of them. And they weren't old movies. They were brand new movies, like important, like they were big movies. He was lucky to get all 4 of them when he got them. And he comes in and he's like, I forgot these in my car, so, and I was like, all right, well, okay, it's going to be $35.99 or whatever it was. And he's like, what, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, why would I be kidding you? And he's like, I'm a good customer. You're not going to charge me that money. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you want me to tell you. He's like, you know me. And he starts telling me, my daughter, this and that and the other. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with it, sir. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a kid. Mm-hmm. What do you want from me? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, long story short, he felt he didn't need to owe the money. He starts screaming at me and like making a whole stink and this and that and the other. And I'm like, really, dude?
Oh my God.
So pathetic. Slams down. Like, this is nothing to me. Of course, screaming about how the money means nothing to him and this and that and the other. Slams $40. And I was like, keep the difference, and walks away like so angry. And I'm like, it's really a sad state that you have to come in, yell at some teenager who's getting paid a few dollars an hour because you can't be responsible enough to drop off a couple of movies on time. It's like the guy who kicks the dog, he's not mad at the dog. He's mad at something else that's going on, but the dog is an easy target. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that led to the debate with the customers was the rewinding fees. Don't be fined, please rewind. And that was a smaller fee. So if the late fee was $5, the rewind fee was like 50 cents or something.
Yeah. That was a whole part of the job. You would have like a tape that rewinder, a speed rewinder, and you'd have a stack like so up to here that you'd have to rewind every single one to the beginning.
That's right.
And that was, again, those jobs were heaven. I would have, still loved the idea of working there, but if I couldn't work there, I'd tear it down, I guess. But that whole kind of anarchic way of treating places like it was just our playground. Remember that carried into school. I don't know if, we talked about this a little bit last time where you guys sort of took over the morning announcements and just did like this morning comedy show every day. It started out with Amnesty International, and then it just morphed into you guys would just, you would bring in trombones and trumpets and stuff.
Forgot about that.
And play and it would and just play it over the morning announcements every day. And
do you remember when I announced the party at Chris's house? It's like this weekend party at Chris's house. Everybody's like, yeah. The principals were like, no, they were so.
It started. It started
that
like
would be a legendary move.
Forget that.
It was the funniest thing. That's why I say you guys were the funniest thing, and they let you do it. You were so charismatic back then. They're like, all right, sure, whatever. I have bigger fish to fry. There's like 1,000 kids here. Just come in and do what you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody. You know,
that was kind of the truth. Yeah, they were. I think we managed to find this really like this little spot that was between obnoxious and endearing, where they like, you know what I mean? Like we were right on the edge, and every now and again we get the teachers like, come on. But for the most part, we were pretty like we were all generally like we were respectful. We were all good students. Like we were all conscientious in most ways. I think we had this humor that came out in this way. And then for the most part, most of the teachers had a pretty good sense of humor about most of the stuff. There were a couple of things, just a couple of moments where we got, teachers tried to teach us a lesson or something for certain things. But
it was Spanish class project.
The Spanish class project in particular. Mike and I were in the same Spanish class. And so we had the same teacher and we used to bust her chops quite a bit, but she gave it as well as she could take it. We made this video, Nick, we had to do this project. We had to give the weather in Spanish. And Mike came up with this idea where it was like, what if I'm delivering the weather? And as I'm saying things are happening, they actually start to happen to me. So it's going to get windy and then huge blast of wind. And then it's going to be there's some snow and some ice. And there's literally throwing ice cubes at me and stuff. And then it was something about, what was it? Like a tsunami or a
tsunami.
And I was thinking about this before because there is something about Michael's genuine, deep belly laugh. When Mike is just laughing to the point where there's no sound coming out and you can just tell he can't control himself. If I see it, I'm done. I cannot hold it together. I'm laughing immediately. And my memory is so clear. I'm sitting there and I'm seeing Mike behind the camera. And after all this, I'm reading from this piece of paper in very poor Spanish. And I see Mike and he's like, I've already done the wind. I've done the thing. Now he grabs the bucket full of water. And he's standing there holding the bucket of water like a little boy who cannot hold himself and he's laughing so genuinely and so hard and doing such a good job of not making noise. And I'm like, oh, Cameron, I gotta say and then there's gonna be a tsunami. And that's a straight up face. I was laughing, I was so hysterical. And of course I could barely keep it together. And then at the end, I sort of made this joke where I would be get up and I would say something. I basically said shit in Spanish. Well, she loved the whole thing. And then she gave us an F because of the swear word.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, really? So she's like, well, if you redo it. And then so we redid it. And of course, very obnoxiously, I did it completely boring, with no expression or anything, because if you tell us we can't be outrageous morons, then we won't do anything.
Yeah.
Like true toddlers. Anyway.
I think we blamed it on bad editing. It's we're going to get an F for bad editing. It was supposed to be cut out. It's it's the VCR. I was using 2 VCRs.
Oh, Mr. Zaneski, that's just a bad cut. No, we can trim that right out. After we intentionally made a point to say it, and it doesn't matter how blatantly obvious it is. No, I mean, what do you mean? The total straight face, surprising. What do you mean? What do you mean? Nick came in and threw himself across the room and knocked over 3 buckets of popcorn. What do you mean 30 high school kids showed up coincidentally 10 minutes beforehand, whispering about it, laughed hysterically, and left as soon as it was over? I mean, I was busy rewinding tapes.
I remember we also had a couple of events at Dante's place, and you guys probably remember this better than me. I remember one night resulted in, Nick, I think you destroyed the banister that went down to Dante's basement.
That's right.
I think you also shattered a picture, on the wall, and then that morning shaved off your fully grown beard with Dante's disposable razors.
I wasn't even a teenager at that point. I was like an adult knocking down a banister in a frame. That was like a crime. That wasn't even something that could be wiped from my record. It's like, that's something that could haunt me if I ever ran for office. Like, knock down this banister and mirror. I sort of remember that.
Into the wall, and the picture fell and cracked. I think that's how it happened.
Did I just tumble down, or did I just fall down?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
man.
or puked and then fell down. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. I seem to remember there was vomit at the top of the stairs. I don't remember if that was you.
And
But
then we woke up in the morning to hearing you screaming from the bathroom, like, Nick, did you use these razors to cut off your beard? And,
you're
the
like,
night
"Of
before,
course not."
Dave, he had a full beard. Now he's fully, cleanly shaven. Bloody.
He's got half a beard
I
missing.
vaguely remember just the entitlement of shaving with somebody else's razors, or something, for whatever reason, because I just felt like doing it. Oh my God.
And at first, Nick's like, what? Wait, what? Like, what do you mean?
You're like, no.
I forgot.
And then
all
like
about
30
that.
seconds later, he's like, oh, by the way, I recorded this video. Let me show it to you. And it's Nick in my bathroom shaving himself with my razors. I'm like, oh, I think maybe you did do it, Nick.
Do I owe you a razor? I mean, do you want some Harry?
I'm still bitter.
Yeah.
I'm still bitter.
That's not a nice thing to do. This is not very hygienic of me.
No,
I
come
mean,
on. It's just a... Please.
Dude, I think you like invented the vlog, because that was like in the 80s, right? You were vlogging yourself. You were like, hey, everyone, I'm going to be like cutting this beard off today.
It's true. You've always been ahead of your time,
A
Nick.
pioneer.
Oh, I certainly feel like it. Oh my God, man!
Wow.
But look at what else I dug up. Speaking of what,
Oh, boy. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
I have that too.
we all did.
Yeah, I do too.
We all
Yeah,
had that.
I definitely remember. I remember seeing that picture actually.
Yes.
This is a legendary
Yeah.
picture. And I show this just because how it looks like no time has passed, but you see the hair. We all,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more hair there than there
There's
is
a lot
now.
more hair there.
You had a
yeah.
ponytail going there, Nick, right?
Oh yeah, I love Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal was the best thing to happen in our 80s. You know, just the way he would break bones, it was awesome.
So, Nick, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on Hollywood these days? When we were young, you were enamored by Hollywood. You had the biggest movie collection of anybody I knew. I think you were the first person I knew who had laser discs, and you knew everything about every movie, and you were the go-to for really anything about movies. So, are you still like that?
Well, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum here in life, where you guys have kids that you've pretty much raised, and I'm still at the beginning. My daughter is turning 7 on Saturday, for example.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It's International Women's Day. I love saying that.
Okay.
Yeah. But point being, there's not a whole lot of time for me to get into watching as many of the new movies as I would like. Up until she was born, yeah, I was staying on top of everything, and I still don't necessarily forget a movie that I've seen. So yeah, I'm still like that. I just, I'm out of practice.
Oh, who are your top directors still? Tarantino, Spielberg,
No,
like in the old days, or has that changed?
yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg's still the master at shooting. There's just nobody better at scene composition than him. And Tarantino, he's okay. I love his style. It's just, he's brilliant at what he does. I can't fault him for, he does something that I could never do. And his brilliance is amazing. But I would have to say that my two favorite directors right now at this stage of my life are, John Carpenter and the recently, passed David Lynch. Yeah,
I had a feeling you were going to say David Lynch.
Nick, what do you think about, so the Oscars were just the other day.
Yeah.
The Oscars are not what they used to be, in my opinion. I mean, I haven't seen a single one, and it's not because I don't pay attention to any movies at all. It feels like something happened in the early 2000s or somewhere in the teens where they just stopped nominating popular movies for best actor, best director. Like all these movies are like these tiny little niche movies, or they're very niche, and they seem to be almost nominated at a trendiness from what I can see. Like, it doesn't strike me that these are necessarily really good movies. There's like, seems to be a whole undercurrent of political correctness and trendiness that drives popularity or unpopularity of certain movies.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it, because the ratings are in the tank for the Oscars, and movies in general are not getting, they're not getting the traction that they used to.
Just like I said, I'm out of practice. And so I haven't seen any of the movies that were nominated, but you're not wrong in that there's a different vibe around them, I feel, than they were when we were younger, during the Billy Crystal MC days, when it was the thing to watch. And, Billy Crystal was one of the best Oscar hosts ever. And I remember watching it like it was an event. But I feel that in some way it's kind of like baseball. There was a generation growing up that knew all the baseball players, knew all their stats. They knew their cards. They traded everything. They could remember game after game after game. And then nowadays, it's, they're still baseball fans, hardcore fans, but it's not as prevalent in the pop culture as, when the boys used to trade baseball cards all the time. That was their fan. Then movies came along, and in the 60s and 70s, it really took off. And that was a really awesome period of creativity. And then the Oscars really started to reflect, everything was in sync. People's tastes and the things that were getting nominated awards, they were in sync. Now,
you also didn't have access to celebrities 24/7.
No, you didn't.
So there was a lot of pomp and circumstance, and it was like to see the celebrities there and all dressed up and all together was like a great big thing too.
Yeah,
that's right.
Knowing everything about everything, and so there is a lot of mystique that has been taken away from movies that I miss.
Here's my theory, based on nothing other than my opinion, what I've seen in anecdotal views that I've seen, which is that I think somewhere in the mid-teens, the people writing movies, they have some objective of like, it's not just let me make a good film that really entertains people, that tells a hero's journey. The hero's journey is out the window. It's like, no, we need to tell stories that deliver this message. And I think the problem is that doesn't resonate.
Movies have to have stakes for you. You have to know what's at stake for the character in order to feel anything. If you just have a concept and a structure for a movie, but you don't have a character driving the plot, then it's going to feel hollow. And a lot of that tends to come from people only watching the movies that they grew up with, not going back further. I'll tell you this much. There's a great movie called Kiss Me Deadly. This is a 1955 film noir. You have to go look at it. It's a big influence on Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, Steven Spielberg, all down to the briefcase that Tarantino opens up in Pulp Fiction. A lot of those tropes came from that, and it's a good movie. It's shot in composition. Here's my thinking, my final point on this before I ran, because you started this. With film, you had to think about what you were going to shoot, because you couldn't just shoot endless amounts of footage and figure it out in the editing room. You had to frame everything properly. That's why you have one long takes. You ever see these movies where there's a 5 or 6 minute uninterrupted take, and you're wondering, how did they do that? Well, a lot of that came from, artistry, but it also came from the fact if the longer I could do something in one take, the less I have to edit by splicing films together later on. Films that don't work today, people can shoot things on their phone. People can shoot things with a hard drive. They don't have to worry about a budget of, we have $600,000 for 90,000 feet of film. How are we going to make this work? And there's a lot of forethought into that. So I think that you can see it in movies and in television that when you can just shoot anything, you don't learn anything.
Nick, that's a really brilliant point, and I think it's a testament to the benefit of restriction. And it's to say, like, You need rules. Otherwise, it's very hard to create anything good.
Honestly, video has made it more affordable for a lot of people to make movies because they don't have to worry. All you have to do is go buy a camera and you can make a movie. But it's, to go back to the Jurassic Park reference I made earlier, it's like what Jeff Goldblum says to, I forget the actor's name. He says, I'll tell you what the problem is here, that with what you're doing here, it says it didn't require any discipline to attain it. You just saw what others did before you, and you just took the next step. You didn't spend time learning it for yourself, so you don't take any responsibility for it. Do you guys remember Jaws pretty well?
Yeah.
All right. Remember when these kids are out boating and Chief Brody is going to take a raft out there and tell them to come back in. There's a shark. And then behind them, the mayor and his cohort drive onto the raft and start to tell him, you yell shark, we got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July. Do you remember that line?
Yes, I do.
Right.
I remember that.
Go back and watch.
They're on like the ferry or whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now that's a one shot. But it's a one shot where the camera doesn't move, but the car pulls on, the raft pulls out, and it starts for there's four people, then 3 people, then 2 people, then into close up, and then they pull back, and then the whole time the ferry's moving and turning back around. That's where So, did Spielberg have to do that? No, he did it because he could see how the language of film worked. You start off way back with the 4 or 5 people. By the end of it, you have 2 heads going, we got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July. It's an intense moment. Go back and watch that. That's a beautiful piece of blocking and composition. And when you see stuff like that, that requires patience, it requires forethought, and it requires not making it up on the day. So I will always be a fan of that kind of film language, and I think people know that innately when they see it.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I'll challenge you, and then I know it's getting late, guys. But one thing I challenge you is the next time you're looking for something to watch, put on TCM. Don't plan it. Don't think it through. Just go click on and see whatever it is. Jump in the middle of the movie. See if you can figure out what the movie is from where it is. Because honestly, you talk about what's missing in film these days. It's not missing. It's still there. You just have to go find it. All the great films are still there. There's so many films. No one in history will ever be able to watch all of them. It's just impossible. But when you start to talk about TV shows that aren't doing it for you, or I'm watching too many YouTube videos, or you're just looking for something that's got a little bit more substance, just go to Max, put on the TCM channel, pick something by random, and watch it. You may hate it, you may love it, but you will see something you never saw before.
That's a great suggestion, Nick.
Yeah,
I'm going to take you up on that.
Awesome. We'll have
All
you
right,
back.
is everybody
Nick.
else tired or what?
We'll have an excuse to talk about something.
Oh, yeah. We do this every week.